So today we're going to look at a section where we're going to be reading graphs. In other words, looking at graphs and getting information from them. And it's going to be based on information and about the way the graph looks. And we know a couple of these. So let's just go through a couple of these and then we'll go to our Education Perfect. If I have a line... Okay. All right. So again, the blue line going up means it's positive. Red line's going down means it's negative. And remember, you read them from the left to the right, just like you're reading a book, pages on a book. Yeah? All right. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. So in this lesson, we're going to be reading graphs, but what it means is we're going to be interpreting and analyzing the graphs, looking at what the information presented on a graph actually means. Okay? So, one of the things that we need to always remember on graphs, or with any mathematical equation or expression, is the importance of units, right? If I told you that I was going to give you $50, you hope it's dollars, but what if it was 50 whacks with a stick? Yeah? All right. So units are important, aren't they? So you must always think about the units that are given. And so on graphs, remember that when you have the units, that units don't have to be will usually not be the same on both axes. For example, this one might be time, and this one might be ice cream. They also may be given in hours and given in liters. So you have to be careful to watch your units. When you're answering a question, the answer is not correct without its units. Exactly. All right. So you've got to make sure to watch for your units. And also, your units are going to tell you something about what it is you're measuring. You've got units for length, units for distance, depth, etc. And specific units are used for specific items. One of the common ones you'll see is time. And remember that time, seconds, minutes, hours, days, years, all kinds of units for time.
Also milliseconds.
Right? Exactly. Still more even. Also remember that many times they don't write out the entire phrase. They'll just use an abbreviation. So for meters, they'll use M, seconds for S, liters, capital L, etc. Okay? Now, be careful with this one. Why am I want you to be careful with that one? What did we use M for?
Meter. Oh, gradient.
M equals gradient, exactly. So you have to be careful sometimes and make sure that you're really talking about the units and not talking about the gradient. Because M always stands for gradient as well, okay? So be careful when you're looking at your units.
Can you change what stands for gradient?
No. You must use M. All right.
What is
So,
stand for gradient? What is G?
don't know. We can look it up. Okay, here we go. So here's just a big table full of units that you might see, right? And the symbols that they use.
Can I take a photo?
You may.
Thank you.
All right?
Okay.
And of course, Education Perfect, you know. You got to get to the bottom one. Happiness equals kittens. All right? There we go. So lots of different units that you can use. Happiness is not always kittens. All right, so there we go. Take a look at this linear graph. It shows time on the x-axis and volume on the y. Thank you. These are the variables. Remember, we introduced that idea of variable. What does a variable mean?
Letter.
It's the letters, but why are they called variables?
Because they vary.
Because they vary, exactly, right? So they can vary over time, or they can vary according to different units as well. So this one is the volume of ice cream eaten over time. So do you see at the bottom, we've got time in hours, and the line is going up.
Positive.
So it's positive, which means, and if you look at that, on the side, it's the volume of ice cream measured in liters. Okay? All right. And so what do you notice about this line? As time goes by, It goes up, which means what in this case, though?
You're eating more ice cream.
You're eating more ice cream, exactly. As time goes by, more ice cream is eaten. Make sense? Because just the way it goes, yeah, but ice cream is special. And notice also that it's measured, the volume of ice cream is measured in liters, and it has a symbol, they use the symbol L.
Nice.
Okay? All right, so that's going into your exercises. I'm not doing those for you. You're going to do those for you. Many times on a graph, you won't always have just a line. You might have dots that represent certain pieces of data. So if you're looking at this particular instance, this graph shows the heights of different people in a family. So these are the heights against the age of the Simpson siblings. So what is the axis on the bottom? Guys, what's the axis on the bottom? Age. What's the axis on the Y? Height in what kind of units? In centimeters. Good. So you can look at this graph and then answer questions based on the information that's given. Notice that they can't just give you individual dots without also labeling them. Why is that important?
Because then you don't know
Because
who
you
it
don't know
applies
who
to.
the, yeah.
Exactly. We have to have a label to be able to tell who people are. Thank you. Okay, so looking at these, have a good look at the graph and see what you notice. Can you tell which sibling is the tallest? Oliver, clearly, right? Because it's higher on the height scale. Which one of those two is the youngest? Natalie. And so, which one is the oldest? Oliver. So you can see that Oliver is not only the tallest, but also the oldest, right? Excellent. Okay.
Oliver's really tall.
So you can see how they line up with the axes, and it's easy to see. So how tall is Natalie then? 120 centimeters. Okay, good. Okay, guys. All right. So since he is taller, that's why his point is higher on the graph, right? Because as you go up on the y-axis, the heights go up. Okay? And as far as the age, remember age read from right to left. The further right you are, the older you're going to be. Excellent. So that kind of information we've looked at when we were reading graphs before. And one thing you need to remember, though, is that when you're putting units on something, it's important to use appropriate units. Do you measure your age in seconds?
No, unless you've just been born, just straight after.
Right. So it wouldn't be very appropriate for very long, right? What do we usually use for measuring age? Years. Do you measure your height in millimeters?
No.
Not usually. How about meters?
Yes.
Or you can.
You can, but it's not as precise as using what kind of units? Centimeters usually, right? For us. Yeah, centimeters usually. It's more precise. Okay? Good. So make sure that you watch out to make sure the units are compatible. Let's look at this one. Volume of ice cream in the freezer over time. What happens when you put ice cream in the freezer at your house?
It freezes.
Well, what happens over time?
It goes moldy.
Well, not at my house. What happens?
It's eaten.
As you eat it, what happens? You have less and less of it, right? So here, we're looking at the volume of ice cream in the freezer. So how much ice cream did we start with at the very beginning?
2 liters.
2 liters. And we ended up with no ice cream after how many hours?
5 hours.
5 hours. And then you could find it at any point in between. All right. So you can see that the volume of ice cream is going down over time. Right? Make sure you're answering the units putting in the appropriate units and answering a question.
Going get it at all.
Exactly. When things are easy, you go too quickly and you don't learn it. So make sure that you're very careful when you're working on these and that you take your time to get them done correctly. Okay?